you keep putting yourself out there and you keep sticking through all of the tough things to deal with, because it's something you love to do.
Coming at you with Subversion.
Why, hello there, my loyal, lovely subverts. And for those of you that are new, let me tell you a little bit about what this project is. Every Thursday, I'm going to bring you somewhere around an hour's worth of an interview, depending on how chatty or tacit I'm feeling that day. What I bring you is an hour's worth of conversation with a really interesting musician. We talk about just growing up, what life was like, talk about their music and what influences them, and then we end on the subject of mortality. So and the reason I bring that up is because I feel like it is a constant third rail we're always sort of fighting against. And if we can just, have discussions on what we conceptualize death as, I feel like we can better enjoy our lives if we just confront that reality that we're not going to be here someday, and that's okay. Let's just make the best of it. And I know that sounds real cliche, but got no better way to say it. I'm just going to let you know that I'm also still on this campaign to get more listeners. My goal is to have 1,000 weekly listeners by about April 2018. So you can help me smash that goal. Just smash it to pieces. One of the first ways that you can do that is at the end of this, hit that subscribe button, give it a share. I really do appreciate it. So anything you can do really helps. One thing that we also do on this show is I try to promote charity projects and join in the effort of trying to help people abroad with some pretty dire situations. And this week comes from Malawi, and I shared this one a couple weeks ago, but we're going to try to promote each one of these until they get totally funded. So this one's out of Malawi, and it's put on by the founder himself, Gret Glyer, and it's for I'm going to butcher this, but it's the Chingwaluma village, where 300 families live, and they have to walk about 45 minutes there and back to get water from just a dirty source. So what they're trying to do is drill a water well for these folks, and for the price of about $1.48, you can provide 20 years worth of clean water to a family. So that is an immense gift. I can think of no better way to spend $1.48 than to give 20 years of clean water to a family. So I mean, really, even $5 really helps these folks. I mean, it really gets them a lot closer to their goal. And it looks like the project has raised $4,749 with $4,150 left. So if you could go and get the DonorSee app or visit at donorsee.com/project/823. All right, I'm going to jump right into this interview now with Andrew Spreck. I hope you enjoy it, and I will see you at the end.
My name is Andrew Spreck. I'm a songwriter out of Wyoming, Minnesota. I'm an acoustic artist. I go out and I play all around town, bars, restaurants, tap rooms, you name it. If it seems like a good opportunity, I'll do it.
Right.
I'll weigh the pros and cons, and I'll most likely do it if I'm available. I'm close to wrapping up an album I've been working on, and I'm returning to where I started as a rock, blues, lead guitar type player, and it's something I've been missing now that I've been acoustic for 6 years. I haven't played with a live band in a number of years, and I really miss just tearing up some lead guitar and getting some nice tone out of a nice loud amp and doing that. So I've decided to record this new album, and it's all going to be electric, drums, bass, electric guitar. I think I've got 8 songs done and about 4 more to finish up, and I do my recording in the winter time, and I was hoping to get her done here before the warm weather and the outdoor yard work and activities kick in. But I think it's going to have to get finished up in the fall. But I'm pretty excited about it. It's all original songs. Some of the songs are fairly older songs that I've written a long time ago, and like breathing life into a song that I've written. Maybe I wrote it on an acoustic guitar 10 years ago, and getting some drums and some bass and some guitar on that thing, and just giving it life is a big thrill for me. So
Right.
it's pretty cool. And most of the songs I'm recording turn up in my live acoustic set lists frequently. And when you're one person and you're playing the acoustic guitar and singing, there's a ceiling to what that song can sound like in that environment, and really getting it in with a drummer and getting a full band sound on that thing, adding some couple extra guitar parts, maybe a lead in there, and just giving it some life. That's a big thrill for me. So
Nice.
that's pretty cool.
So you're recording all of the instruments yourself?
I've had some drummers come in, and usually I'll lay down the rhythm electric guitar and the drums simultaneously until we get a good drum take. And then I've been either having a bass player do the bass for me, like at a later time, or I've been doing some of the bass myself. If I feel that I can get my bass skills up to the task for that particular song, I'll do it myself so I can get the guitar work done and get the song done. And I'm actually I've had a few really talented bass players come in and help me out on some of the songs as well. So
Cool.
It's in the my shoe is squeaky. At the place I'm at with trying to balance other people's schedules, I kind of gave that up.
Sure.
That was one of the things that was one of the reasons why I gave up the band
Sure.
years ago. It's trying to balance everybody's schedule, keep everyone happy and all that. So trying to get a whole band of people together who aren't being compensated in any way, who are just there to help me out, and to get them all to come all at the same time is a bit of a challenge.
Sure.
So
it's hard enough to manage our own schedules individually, right?
Right.
Then when you factor in 4 other people,
Right.
Things can get pretty complicated.
It is. It's
hard
so,
to get people's schedules to overlap.
So on my first CD that I recorded, In the Distance, that one I basically did drums and guitar and built the tracks individually. And it's been working. I'm on my 3rd album right now, and the process is working. And I guess if I ever do get like 2 or 3 other musicians in the same room and do any recording, it might be a miracle. So
Right.
but I won't deny that I would like that to happen. But no, it's coming together. The songs I'm refining my recording technique and my whole way of going about it, and being the producer and making all the decisions and stuff, and I'm refining those skills. And I find that my time in the studio is more productive than it was previously, where I would think the song's good enough, and then you go back and listen to it and it's not, and then you got to get the drummer to come back and all that. So my studio skills are sharpening, and
Sure.
I'm pretty productive when I get in there and actually get the time to do the work. So
Yeah, no one's more critical of your work than yourself too. So
Exactly.
I'm sure you hear those little ticks that other people might not notice.
Right.
But to you, it's the end of the world as far as that piece goes. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Well, I try to get the takes as good as they're going to be.
Yeah.
And then you try to fix the hiccups where you can. And some stuff you just can't fix it. And you leave it there, or you start over and you pick a new day to get another drummer in or whatever to start over completely. And that really delays the process. So
Sure.
there's it's warts and all kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But it's quality stuff, It's not it's nice, and I get them professionally mixed, and the albums sound good.
Yeah.
I feel it's a little more on the professional side as opposed to somebody who's just recording on their computer and mixing it themselves. When I was planning to finish up my first album, and I thought I was going to mix it myself, and I got into it, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm not going to sheetrock my whole house and then do a terrible job with the plastering, because that's what you're going to see.
Sure.
And that's the kind of way I look at it. Like, I'm not going to do all the work to record and then try to mix it myself and have it come out sounding amateurish.
Yep.
So I bite the bullet, and I go out and I play my gigs so that I can pay someone to mix my album.
Sure. So and you mentioned earlier that you record in the winter. I think that's probably a pretty good strategy, right, for Minnesota, because we've got nothing to do in the winter outside, so might as well coop yourself inside and do something productive, right? Because
exactly.
Most of the time for me, it's either reading a book or playing video games or something pretty, relatively unproductive, in the winter. But then you get to free yourself up and feel like you've done, your creative stuff during the winter,
right?
So that during the summer you can be outside and sort of enjoy the nice weather, right?
Right. And I kind of go in 3 cycles, and with the amount of time, I've got a day job, and I've got family commitments, and a lot of things that are vying for my time, and I can't, I've tried to do everything all at once and have failed miserably, but I go in cycles where, like I say, in the winter time, I don't do as many gigs, especially around the holidays. I just want to shut it down. Usually in December, I just shut down the gigs, and I don't do a lot until March or April again.
Okay.
And that's my time to either to record or to write.
Okay.
And I find that I spread myself too thin if I'm trying to do everything all at once. And so I just focus, like this past winter, I just focused on recording. And I really just need to focus on one thing to do it to my standard. And then once the weather turns nice, then I want to start getting out and gigging.
Yeah.
And then do the gigging, and I may do a little bit of writing in between, but if I'm in the recording cycle, I don't do a lot of writing, because I don't feel that I can put enough of my time and energy into it for the writing to be productive.
Okay.
And then you get frustrated, and then you psych yourself out, and then you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So, so this summer, I'm just going to be doing a lot of gigging into fall, and then I will be finishing up my album in the fall, hopefully, or maybe through the summer. It's down to a few bass lines, and then doing some lead guitar stuff, and
nice.
Maybe getting a guest in to do some other instrumentation. But and then after that, I'm hoping to get back into doing more writing.
Cool.
As far as the writing goes, I'm not one of these guys that can write a song a day.
Oh, sure.
There's these challenges and these songwriting groups, and they'll do they'll pick a theme, and they'll all spend a day or 2 days or a weekend or whatever to write their song, and then they perform their song at the end of the event or whatever. I'm like,
wow.
If I write 2 complete songs, if I finish a song that I started in 1 calendar year and I do 2 of them, I'm doing pretty good.
Sure.
It's the whole thing of coming together with the music and the lyrics and all that. It's hard work for me, and I'm envious of the folks who can just have this endless supply of lyrics and all this, and they just the verses and the choruses just pour out of them. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, geez, it would take me 5 years to do what this guy does in a month.
Sure.
But that's one of the things you come to terms with, after doing it for a while. I'm like, okay, well, this is my pattern and this is how I do it. And that's going to have to satisfy me. So.
Sure. So let's kind of go back to square one in your life. Where'd you grow up? Sort of what influenced you musically growing up? Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself there?
All right. I grew up in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, in the 70s, and it was AM radio, I guess, in the car, driving in the car with your parents. I remember having music on at home, but again, I think it was just like AM radio, whatever. My folks weren't real into music. They didn't have like a favorite band or anything like that I could identify. Sure. I think it was just whatever was on at the time. And, the 70s was a really different time for music and for radio and all that. But I guess, I've got 3 older siblings, and my parents always had us in, we were either taking violin lessons, or my older brothers took organ lessons. My dad had played piano as a child, and he started getting back into that. And I always had, I never had any interest in reading notes on a page.
Okay.
And I didn't get music until I was a teenager, probably 14, and I saw the Woodstock movie on the public PBS, and I saw Jimi Hendrix and Joe Cocker and 10 Years After and Santana, and it nailed me. I was like, that's it. I have to do that. So that was like a musical awakening for me, because like really music wasn't other than the lessons that I don't think anybody really liked, the organ lessons and stuff. It was just like something your parents making you do that you don't really like. And I never really cared for playing the violin and all that stuff. So like when this like music was on Woodstock, and it nailed me, and I knew that I had to do something with music. That was the awakening.
Okay.
So, I have a couple of uncles who are really talented musicians, but they lived out of state, and I didn't see them very often. And my one uncle would play bluegrass music, and he plays banjo, violin, mandolin. He plays all this stuff, and he and his wife were professional bluegrass musicians for a number of years, and there was always something about their music that really grabbed me. I'm like, well, I'm a teenager, and it's not really cool for me to like this bluegrass stuff, but there was something about what they did that I really liked. Yeah. So that's really the only music in my extended family.
With having music be in your younger years be sort of this academic thing, more or less, right? I mean, this extracurricular that you were pushed into, sort of that didn't really make it click for you until you saw this rock and roll thing on TV, and that's when you sort of had this awakening and that's sort of what drove you in the direction that you're in right now. That coupled with the bluegrass,
absolutely.
Right? So, and I wonder if the older we get, because I asked that question, like how you came up, and what music informed you culturally, and what informs the music that you make now. I think with people in my closer to my generation, maybe that means something a little different, because for us, we kind of we had more access to music through CDs and MTV and whatnot, sort of, so culturally the way that we've been delivered music has sort of changed. And it's weird, in my own lifetime I've just seen it morph from something that the kind of music that you listen to identifies something culturally about you, right? And it's really important to how you identify with your peer groups, right? But and I've seen it change from that meaning a lot to that meaning a little. We talked about before we even started the interview that live music doesn't seem to be very important to people. Mm-hmm. And when I was growing up, it certainly was. But now it's almost sort of reverted back to perhaps this cultural time where in the mainstream music was sort of there and it's in the background, but it wasn't like this huge cultural identifier, perhaps, you know? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm just kind of curious after this sort of coming to understand where you stand culturally with music, what sort of blues and country artists help develop the sound that you create now?
Really, it was like blues and rock out of the 70s.
Okay.
The Allman Brothers are
Nice.
huge. And, you know, as I go along and I discover more music that I like, it's just like this constant education and this constant, like, it's like a family tree kind of where the artists that I like, you know, I read articles about them, or I find out who they are listening to and all that. And then you branch out and you start exploring some of the stuff. But like for me, like when I was younger, you know, I discovered Stevie Ray Vaughan from one of my first guitar teachers. And this guitar teacher was pulling these licks on the electric guitar, and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that's cool. And
Yeah.
then so I started listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then I discovered, you know, Albert King, who was Stevie's biggest influence. And you just, like I say, you keep branching out and learning about all these different artists. So there's this huge array of blues artists that I'm into, and a lot of the rock stuff. You know, I go through these phases where I discover a new band, and then all of a sudden I'm buying every album they ever made, and my wife's like, "So you're into, you know, whatever it is at the time."
Yeah.
I'm like, "How could you tell?" Well, you've got like every album that they've ever, you know, released.
Yeah.
It just showed up on the door that I, you know, just bought through Amazon or whatever. But I'm kind of all in when I discover an artist that I like, and there's not a lot of gray area. I either love something or I'm just not going to pay attention to it.
Okay. Sure.
So, you know, and, you know, through the one of the biggest bands that my wife and I have listened to our whole entire 26 years of existence together is the Black Crowes. And through the Black Crowes, I've discovered just this huge array of artists, especially Graham Parsons, the Flying Burrito Brothers. Graham Parsons was the pioneer of the country rock sound.
Okay.
And, you know, Graham Parsons was never popular in his lifetime. And it was after he passed that people discovered how incredible this music was that he made.
Okay.
And that's kind of, you know, the Graham Parsons kind of a sound, and, you know, mixing the rock and the country together. And, you know, a lot of that is what comes out in my live acoustic performances. And, you know, it's called Americana nowadays, and it never has, you know, it hasn't always had a genre or a title. And I feel like I've got my feet in multiple genres, and I'm always scared, like if I'm at a gig and I'm setting up and somebody will come up and say, "What kind of music do you play?" That's like the hardest
Right.
question to answer, because I cover this wide array. And if I tell someone I play rock, well, then they're not going to want to hear me. Or if if they're not
Right.
a rock, if they prefer country, and I'm like, you know, I try to tell people now that I play Americana.
Okay.
And even
Sure.
even that
falls
like,
under a blanket.
some people don't even know what that means.
Oh,
But
okay.
but really, like Americana is blues, rock, country,
Mm-hmm.
soul, all in one thing. And not every one song can be defined in one category.
Sure.
And that's kind of the way I define myself as an artist. Actually,
Okay.
it is just kind of like this big smorgasbord of
Sure.
influences.
Yeah, and I suppose you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into one particular genre so that, like you're saying, if you say the wrong genre to someone,
Right.
they might write you off. But
Exactly, and they do. And then like if you say I play country and rock and folk or whatever, well then their idea of country and rock and folk might be not anything close to what I'm actually doing. And if they don't hear a country and rock or a folk song in the first song that I play by an artist that they're familiar with, they're leaving. Like, okay, well, I'll be here all night, so
right, and you could say folk, and people are going to think like Bob Dylan, for example.
Right.
And it's like if you really get into what folk is, that's not really. I consider like a live bluegrass band to be closer to genuine folk than Bob Dylan. I see Bob Dylan as like rock and roll, but I think a lot of people, they've got this pop culture association with certain genres of music. So and when you say country, they think Luke Bryan, right? They don't think
I don't.
right. Most people though. But when I think of country, I think of like Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cash and like old school,
Merle.
sort of Merle Haggard.
Yeah.
Just sort of really traditional country is what I think of, and that's definitely me projecting. Like that's the country that I like. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, and
I think when people ask you that question, that's what they're sort of projecting their expectations of what they're going to hear from you, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, I must be kind of a mystery to some people because, like, I'll play like, I'll play a real rocked up country song, and then I'll play like kind of a more laid back, more of a kind of a folky or song like that, and I go from one genre to the next, and I guess I don't think of music as labels. I think of it as either I like it or I don't.
sure.
That's how I dissect music, and some stuff I like, and some stuff I really like, and some stuff like I can't live without. And that's kind of how I categorize music.
Okay.
And there's some stuff I listen to more often than others, and some of that's by design. I've you find that you appreciate things more if you put them down for a while, and then you come back to them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so that's one of the great mysteries, I guess.
So let's get into some of your music here.
Sure.
The first song that you have to share with us is Devotion.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you tell the audience a little bit, set up the stage for this particular song for us.
So for a guy who has been in cover bands and a blues band for 15 years and doing some originals, but not a lot, and going out and playing with a band, and you've got this safety net behind you, and if I play a wrong chord, sing a wrong word, mess up the lead, whatever, this band is basically covering that up for you. And when I gave up the band business and I recorded my own album and went out as an acoustic artist, I found out real quick that when you're sitting there with a box with 6 strings in your voice.
Yeah, sure.
And when you mess up, anyone who's paying attention hears it. And nobody hears it louder than me. And so the whole thing about making this transition, I was always in a band with another rhythm instrument and a bass guitar and drums. So my identity in the band was really with singing and playing lead guitar. And now when I'm an acoustic artist, I'm making this jump and I'm thinking, well, I've been playing guitar for all these years. This won't be a big deal. And I start playing acoustic guitar and I find out I'm not very good at it. So, the first year or so was a challenge to be able to play the guitar and sing and do all this stuff and be the only entity in the room that's making this music. And there's nobody there to help you when you screw up. So it's a dose of humility, and you work through it. But so I started out playing, any gig I could get, just to get the experience of being a solo artist. And you're playing coffee houses for tips, and you're playing this and that. And at the time, gas was like over $4 a gallon. And I'd be going to these gigs and it would literally cost like $15 in gas. And I would go and play and there'd be like $1.50, $2 in the tip jar at the end of the night. And that was tough because when I was in a band, we always got paid.
Right.
And, a band gets paid like several $100s that, each guy's walking away with usually close to $100. Mm-hmm. And here I'm like, I'm breaking it down to dollars and cents. And I'm like, well, I'm in the whole $12 for this gig. I'm doing it again tomorrow at a different place. I'm going to be in the whole like $15 for that one. And so all these things, are going through my head. And I wanted to put together a song that kind of captured some of that and some of the feel of going out and playing to an audience who doesn't appreciate you. You're playing in a coffee house, and there's, people are they're doing their homework and studying for school or having conversations, and then I walk in and I'm not a coffee house performer really, because my stuff is, some of my stuff is fits that setting, but a lot of my stuff is more rock or a little louder, faster, and didn't really fit. So with all of these things that are going through my head, I started putting this song together. And really the bottom line is the thing that ties it all together for me is the devotion that it takes to go out and do this, and to go out and keep doing it when you are being seen as a piece of furniture or a commodity. You're filling the air with sound that nobody's really listening to. And so it all came together, and when I came up with the title Devotion, it was really fitting, because I've been doing the acoustic thing for 6 years, and I've seen a lot of people kind of come and go, and people who are like on the scene and they're playing every venue, and then in a year and a half, 2 years, you don't hear about them anymore. And so really the devotion to keep sticking it out, because you keep putting yourself out there and you keep sticking through all of the tough things to deal with, because it's something you love to do.
Right.
And I love to perform, and when I do connect with an audience, or even a member of the audience, or one table of people, and when I make that connection, that that's the reward right there.
Sure.
Somebody comes up to me in a break or afterwards and says that they really like what I'm doing, and it's unique, and that they're not hearing other people who are maybe singing with the same passion or doing the same kind of cover songs that I'm doing. And I get that feedback from a lot of people, and that's really rewarding.
Sure.
So Devotion is just a culmination of that transition from a rock band into a solo acoustic performer.
Oh, this life that I've been living has led me here tonight. Thanks for listening. I hope I do alright. It's a brand new game I've been playing, working so hard to keep it live. And there's a price I've been paying to come out and sing for you tonight. And I've gotta say, but it's alright. 'Cause I've gotta say, I've got a notion, it's pure devotion. And I've gotta keep myself in motion with my devotion. Got my guitar and my song. I welcome you all with open arms. Like an open book, you turn my pages, and I pour it out on open stages. And I've gotta say, I've got a notion, it's pure devotion. And I've gotta keep myself in motion with my devotion. And I've gotta say, I've got a notion, it's pure devotion. And I've gotta keep myself in motion with my devotion. Oh, this life that I've been living has led me here tonight. Thanks for listening. I hope I did alright.
Yeah, and I think when anyone takes on a creative endeavor, it can be really disheartening because you're not getting a lot of feedback, sort of especially in the earlier parts of what you're doing, right? You don't have any kind of people following you,
Right.
or anything like that, and it can be kind of disheartening. So really, you have to sort of make it like it's for you. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be doing it because you love doing it, and it's rewarding for you. But of course, there's sort of a double-edged sword, because what's the point of doing it unless people are listening, right?
Right.
So and like you said, there's certainly something that makes it worth it. Just those little glimmers when someone does give you the recognition that you feel like you do deserve, because you've put in all this work,
Right.
and you've had all those gigs where no one was paying attention, and you left without anyone really saying a word to you,
Right.
So and then it probably means even a lot more when someone comes up to you and gives you their appreciation. And
Absolutely.
so-
That's it's really rewarding, and it makes you feel good. And I guess I've always been accused of always seeing the negative in everything, and I'm trying, man. I'm trying. It's a hard behavior to change, but sometimes I do see. Sometimes I fail to see all the positive stuff because there's just one thing that's just nagging at me.
Okay.
And it's maybe 5-6 people do come up to me at a show and talk to me and say that they really enjoyed it. And as I'm getting older and wiser, and I think I'm becoming better able to accept that praise and be comfortable with it too. Because
Okay.
I've always been kind of when I was back in a band, and at the end of the night, you got some sloppy drunk coming up telling you how awesome it was. It's like, thanks, man. But
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything to you.
Okay.
Because, to me, it doesn't mean anything for somebody in that condition to say that you're the greatest, because pretty much I could be up there with one string on my guitar and bend the note, and they might think I was the greatest, So,
I think I see what you're saying.
Right.
Like, you need to consider the source, whether it's criticism or a compliment. So, and then the next one you have for us is called Tupperware Lady.
Yep.
So, and you were telling me a little bit about this before the show, and it's kind of an endearing subject matter. So,
Yeah.
why don't you share for us what that
Yeah,
is?
my mom was a Tupperware lady when I was a kid, and there was it really shapes your childhood, and it really it carries through the way I think about things and the way I relate. And, it's tough because my mom would go out and do Tupperware parties like 5 nights a week. And my dad had a day job, plus he had all these side businesses. And he was typically doing something. He had a tree nursery. He had all this stuff going on. So it was usually my older siblings and me alone. My mom would get dinner on the table, and she'd be gone to a Tupperware party. And we always ate earlier than the neighborhood kids, and I always had to go home to eat dinner early. And why do we have to eat at 5 when the neighbors eat at 6:30 and I miss all that playtime? So it's all these little things that really like shape your childhood and shape your memories and all that.
Sure.
So she was gone a lot. And then I would go with my mom. She would, like once a week, she would go and pick up all the Tupperware that was ordered at her parties. And she would bring it home in all these boxes, and it would be all over the place. And then we would have to sort it out into individual orders. Like this person bought this avocado-colored bowl and this yellow pitcher or whatever. And we would, pack it all up into all these different orders. And then my mom would go and deliver this stuff. And I'd go with, and I would sit in the car, and it's just all these memories that I wanted to bring together in this song. And so I put this song together, and we were at a family gathering, and I brought my guitar with, and there was a lull in the action. I said, I've got this new song that I wrote that I want to play to everybody. And I played it, and I think my mom was frightened, but also flattered that I had written this song, because it's like being a songwriter, you're really opening yourself up. And again, that was a hard thing to come to terms with when I released my first album and I went out as a solo artist. And you're opening yourself up. And in this case, I was opening up my mother to maybe, I know what it's like because I go out and I play 40, 50 gigs a year, and I'm away from my family, 50 nights a year. And I know what it's like when I've got this passion that I have to do, and I know that, my kids would rather have me home than be gone. And I know my mom must have those same kinds of feelings, and, the feeling of, I don't want to say guilt, but that kind of feeling for being gone a lot, to do this thing. And in her case, the 70s, weren't flush with cash. And
Sure.
She was, my parents' generation was probably one of the first generations who were having to both work to support a family.
Right. That's what I was thinking about
And
when you're telling this story.
And that's all just shaping the way my childhood played out. And I tried to capture all this in the song with, my mom would always get like a company car every couple of years or whatever. And it was always like the biggest like Ford station wagon, so that she could carry all her Tupperware around.
Okay.
And so that makes it into the song. And, having dinner on the table at 5 makes it in there. Piling in the car to go deliver the Tupperware, all that stuff, it just came together.
She has dinner on the table every day at 5. Every kind of casserole that's ever been tried. Off to a party she goes, kids are on their own. Day in the life of a Tupperware lady. She drives the biggest station wagon money can buy, with the wood grain paneling on the side, with the kids all piled in the bed, long for the ride. Day in the life of a Tupperware lady. afternoon, the orders come home. The boxes are carried to the house on a roll. In a room full of plastic bowls, look at what she sold. A day in the life of a Tupperware lady. Times are pretty good for a Tupperware lady. Day in the life of a Tupperware lady. Say good night to the Tupperware lady. A day in the life of a Tupperware lady.
So I played this song, and you know, and my mom says at the end, you know, as she's trying to process all this, and she says, "Well, I hope you're not going to play that in public." I said, "Well, I'm playing it at the state fair at my gig next week. I hope that's not going to be a problem."
Yeah.
But I think she's accepted the song at this point.
Yeah.
And you know, I run into like people like at my gigs, and I'll play the song, and they'll come up and they're like, "I used to sell Tupperware," or "My sister was a Tupperware lady," or whatever. And it's kind of, you know, it's a bygone thing because of the internet.
Sure.
Tupperware, you know, you can still get it.
Yeah.
But it's not like it used to be.
Sure, it's just something on the shelves at the superstore.
Right.
You know, so.
Right. And it's another like something about simpler times back in the 70s. When you had social interaction, you would have a person would have a Tupperware party, bring all her friends together. My mom would go and display all her stuff, tell everyone how great it was, and you know, it was like a social thing.
Sure.
And you don't get that when you go on, you know, Amazon and you click some stuff that you want. You don't
Sure.
get that social interaction anymore.
Yeah, good point.
And that's that social interaction is what's lacking, I think, in so many lives. And it's just we've reduced ourselves to a bunch of zombies, just kind of empty zombies, just wandering around with our eyes crossed and drooling because we don't have this social interaction anymore.
Sure.
And you know, I'm really glad that I grew up when I did, and I have all these memories of simpler times. And I think also that comes into my music, where I like to do songs simply, and I like the passion and the soul of the song to come through in a simple way. And you know, people are telling me I should do this and telling me I should do that, and it's like, well, yeah, those are great ideas, thanks. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna do it the way I'm gonna
Sure.
do it, because it's not rewarding otherwise.
Right. Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. What are you doing it for, if not, like I was saying earlier, for yourself, so that
Right.
you enjoy what you're doing.
Right.
And you know, you mentioned vulnerability, and that's sort of a theme that certainly comes up in nearly every episode that I do here, mostly because the questions that I ask are sort of vulnerable questions, but hardly do I ever think of the people that they're writing these songs about being vulnerable. I think that's just something that's sort of slipped my mind, because usually I think of just the artists themselves and them being vulnerable, but really our experiences and the things that inform the things that we create are a direct impression of our experiences with other people. You know, because people are social. I mean, we are very social people. I think you mentioned that you were happy that you grew up in the generation that you did, and even for me, things were pretty simple growing up in the 90s, to where I wasn't touched by this network of things, you know, and how the internet has sort of shaped a culture now. You know, we still did have my mom did Pampered Chef.
Okay.
So I can relate to this a little bit. It wasn't like her full-time gig or anything, but I mean, it was something that she was into and she was doing with her friends. So I sort of see where you're coming from, that, you know, I don't hear of Pampered Chef parties anymore or anything.
Right.
You know, so yeah, that sense of community is gone from economy in a way, and how we distribute goods to each other.
Right.
So yeah, it's an apt analogy or an apt point there.
Right.
Yeah. So the last song that you have for us is called Shoe. Mm-hmm. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Shoe is it's a song that came together. I was traveling by myself down to Chicago to see the Allman Brothers and the Government Mule.
Nice.
And I go where the music is if I can get away, and if like a band I like is not coming to the Twin Cities, and if I can make it happen, usually my wife and I will travel around and see music. But in this case, I was driving down by myself, and I was bound and determined that I was going to get some creative juices flowing on this trip, and I was gonna write a song. And so I'm driving along, and this has always perplexed me as long as I can remember. When you're driving down the road and there's always just one shoe, and it's always tipped over on its side, and it's all like just limp and sad looking, and it's just really pathetic, and it's just sitting there. And I'm always just kind of thinking, and this is like an artist's either skewed sense of perception or very keen sense of perception, depending on how you look at it. But I always just wondered, like, why is there only one? Was it on top of someone's car when they were driving and it eventually fell off? So I started thinking about this, and I literally like started putting these lyrics together as I was driving in the car, and I'm writing them down in a pad, and I'm thinking I got to get a voice recorder, and I'm trying to write, driving, and so I came up with this shoe, and the shoe needed a story, and so I wrote the story of that shoe, and I described its location, and really I described the feeling of loneliness and isolation of that shoe sitting there, because shoes always come in pairs, man. Where's the other one? That poor thing is just sitting there by itself. Yeah. So I put this story together, and a lot of my songs will start out with like some kind of like a subject matter that's maybe a little bit painful or whatever. And but I always try to wrap the song up with some sort of vindication or some sort of a positive message, like something sucks, but it's not always going to suck. And that's one of the subtle things that like people may not pick up in my music, because they're just hearing like how something sucks or whatever. I mean, you got to listen to the whole song all the way through. Sure. So at the end of Shoe, a shoeless man comes walking down the road with a bag on his shoulder, and he comes up to this single shoe on the side of the road, and lo and behold, he pulls the other shoe out of his bag, whether they're a match or not,
Sure.
And then the lyric says the left one is, the left one is me and the right one is you. Something to those effect.
Okay.
So basically this lonely shoe gets vindication and redemption at the end of the song.
Okay.
Which I just think is a beautiful thing, because who doesn't want a partner or a friend or interaction? Who doesn't want that, So that's the way the song wraps up.
Out here I don't have a partner, I've got no place to go. Mile marker 72 is the place I call home. It's such a lonesome feeling, and it's getting very old. Nobody wants to be a shoe on the side of the road. I've got tar on my heel, I've got sand in my soul. Whoa, my laces are frayed, there's a hole in my toe. It's such a lonesome feeling, and it's getting very old. Nobody wants to be a shoe on the side of the road. seems like nothing's gonna change. I'm still caught out in the rain. And when this day is over, tomorrow brings more of the same. I saw a man walking up the street, bag on his shoulder, no shoes on his feet. Would you know he stopped next to me, opened his bag, what did I see? I saw my dream come true. The left one is me, the right one is you. Aren't we a sight to behold when we're walking on down the road? Walking on down the road. 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 Walking on down the road.
Okay, so it kind of comes full circle, and I think I really admire songwriting that you take something that seems maybe mundane and turn it into something cathartic and meaningful, and it takes a certain sort of poetic genius to do that, right? So I have to really appreciate when artists are able to do that, and I think that's really a trademark of a particular kind of genius, really, like I was saying, because I'd like to say that good music doesn't always have to be complex, and the same principle holds true for just concepts, literary concepts, So a lot of people are really into blues music, for example, that's really intricate and like more of your Stevie Ray Vaughns or your virtuoso type of guitar players like Hendrix. But then you've got people like B.B. King, right, who just really play a pretty simple lick, and it's all about just the timing and the apt execution of a given note or an idea for that matter, So yeah, I really admire that in this song here.
That might be the first time as anyone's ever related anything I've done to being genius. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah. No, and I think it's maybe a loaded word or something, but yeah, I mean there are a lot of very genius people who maybe you're not on on any sort of like huge platform or anything, but that doesn't mean that what you're making isn't as creative as someone who did go, have the right amount of luck and were able to get on the big stage. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah. And the question that I like to wrap up with here, which I've been letting people know this ahead of time. I've ran into it far too many times where I've caught people off guard with this, but it's on the subject of mortality. And I like to ask, do you remember a time when you were a kid when you sort of like had a moment where it just clicked that your life was finite and what you were going to do with your life after that, and just sort of the bleakness of knowing your mortality?
Yeah, I guess I never really, even now, I really don't think about that. There wasn't a lot of death in my family or extended family until I was, a little older, like 10. My one grandfather passed away when I was 10, and then there wasn't death in my immediate family, so it was not something I ever thought about.
Okay.
And being the youngest of 4 kids in my family, I always felt, even now, I still feel like a kid, really. I don't think of myself as like this old guy with gray in his beard. I mean, I see it every day when I look in the mirror, but I don't think of myself as being old. And to live out, like, a typical life cycle is you live to be old unless some catastrophic thing happens.
Sure.
So I still, the first time I ever thought like, yeah, I'm going to die someday, was after my kids were born, and somebody recommended that we should probably get a will in case something happens to my wife or I, or both of us at the same time. Someone's going to have to be put in charge of taking care of our kids. And I think that was the first time I ever really sat and thought, yeah, I'm going to die someday.
Okay.
But it's not something like I dread or anything like that. I mean, something's going to happen at some point that'll take you away from
Sure.
this earthly plane, and whatever is out there afterwards is something to be explored. And I guess I don't think of it in terms like that.
Sure. And I kind of frame this question, and I sort of ask it as, do you remember when you were a kid and you realized this thing? And that must just be me projecting, because that's when I sort of, had that fear struck into me, and I've heard this answer a couple times where there was something later in their teen or adult life that really made people sort of question it and have that profound moment of, oh shoot, like, I never really thought about it before. Yeah, this is finite, but like I was saying, yeah, it's just me kind of projecting, right? And the reason I do ask this question is, I feel like even if we don't think about it, because I don't necessarily think about it a lot, but it's sort of a cultural thing where in the West we're sort of afraid to talk about it in some way. Like it's like this repressed thing that so the reason I bring it up is really I'd like to make it a more comfortable conversation to have, because I think there's something beautiful about knowing that it's finite, and that our both our problems and the things that we enjoy are finite. And the only way that I've found to truly appreciate that is to know that this moment is the thing to revere, and the thing that that's the thing to really enjoy, is the very moment that we're in. And my desire to talk about mortality isn't necessarily out of this bleakness. It's more out of trying to see where people's minds go when they think about it. And I think it truly does tell a lot about a person, because I've interviewed people that are more nihilistic and sort of almost have the idea that that, I don't know, like they're almost living to die. And that's sort of a sad thing to hear. I mean, they're great people and everything, and I think they're very deep, but I don't know what I'm trying to say. Just that it shows a lot about a person when you bring up death. So, and I guess I'm curious. So were you religious growing up? Was your family religious?
We went to the Catholic Church for most of my childhood, and that fractured, and my parents started exploring other religions.
Okay.
And it's not, religion and politics are kind of a couple of things that I try not to talk too much about, because I have my opinions, and I don't necessarily always share them, because some people are, too far into stuff, and they just can't see things in a neutral fashion anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I try not to get too into those types of topics. But
yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot on it.
And really, to me, there's a clear separation between religion and spirituality.
Sure.
And I guess I would consider myself more on the spiritual side than the religious side. Again, to label things, and labeling is dangerous.
Sort of goes
And-
back to your thought on genres.
Exactly.
Sure.
But you can
So,
be spiritual without being religious per se.
Right. So Catholicism is just another genre that you like to touch on every once in a while, but not necessarily something you want to pigeonhole yourself in. Right?
Perfect.
Just
Sure.
sure. So yeah, I think we'll wrap up there. I'd like to give you an opportunity to plug anything that you've got going on for the listeners to check you out. Seems like you play a lot of live shows around. So
I do. I encourage people to get out of their house, go see live music, whether it's me or someone else. Just go out and see live music and buy people's CDs. And I'll jokingly say at my gigs, hey, if you like what you're hearing, buy my CD. And at least don't throw it in the trash till you're out of my sight, because things aren't for everybody. But go out, support artists. It's one of the things I've learned from going and seeing bands is that these guys are barely scraping by.
Yeah.
They're trying to support a family. They're traveling, buy their stuff, buy an artist CD, listen to their stuff, share it with somebody. If you don't like it, share it with somebody who who would like it. Go on andrewspreck.com, look me up, look my schedule up, come out and see a show. Hire me to do a house party, any of that kind of stuff. I'm on Spotify, iTunes, all those things. And if a song gets played like 100 times, I get like a tenth of a penny. So look me up on there and listen to some music, man. Go out and hear live songwriters.
Cool. Well, thank you for being part of Subversion. I really appreciate you taking the time here.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
It really was a relaxing interview, and I really do like Andrew's music. His interview and his demeanor really do reflect very well on his music. So I really do hope that you go and check out his music. Go and see him when he's sort of somewhere near you, and please go and buy his record. I really would appreciate it, because that's what this is all about. It's all about supporting local and independent musicians. Also support the charity project that I have this week, which you can find at donorc.com/project/823. And just to remind you, $1.48 can provide clean water for 20 years to one family. That is truly a gift worth giving. I would also really appreciate it if you would just download the DonorC app when you do that. The app really is the best way to interact with this interface. It gives you notifications when there are updates on the projects that you have funded. And at the end of all of these projects, you get a completion video where the people thank you. It really is a lovely experience. You don't get that from donating to the Red Cross. So please engage DonorC and help these people out. I'd really appreciate it. And another way that you can help these folks, or better put, folks in the future that will need funding for these projects, is to share the show. I've got a goal right now of getting 1,000 weekly listeners by April 2018. So if you can help me out by sharing this show with someone, the first thing you can do is just hit subscribe on your way out here and share it with a friend that loves music, loves good conversation. Because together, I think that we can do lovely things. And really, it doesn't take very much. So I hope to see you here next week. But until then, please take care of yourself, and I will see you then.